tell me some of the science, Jay, behind gratitude and love and all these other cognitive things that come in and truly help with the pain. I'm not talking about the car accident, broken leg pain. I'm talking about some of the chronic issues that pop up for us because the other neurons aren't firing.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest variables that we see, when we see patients, we see a lot of chronic pain patients, and chronic pain, should be looked at again like hypertension or diabetes. I mean, these are chronic conditions with an organic component, but to complicate things, an inorganic component. One of the biggest factors that we see that really complicates pain is a lot of the social factors. So, the social factors of financial is huge. So we actually try to be really kind to our patients in terms of financial stuff, go out of our way to try to see if things are approved and fight the insurance company, but also family support. Those patients are going through tough times with their spouses or other family members or with friends, with work.
Sure.
It really weighs in, and it doesn't just weigh in from a sort of, just get over it type of standpoint. I mean, there's real science behind it. You see real hormonal changes. You see
with high stress?
Yeah, with high stress. You see real hormonal changes. You see changes in blood pressure. You see changes in heart rate. You see changes with adrenaline, cortisol levels. You see changes in sleep hygiene. Again, we talked about sleep. You see restorative sleep is affected, so they don't get the same restorative sleep, which then again perpetuates that sort of domino effect where they continuously get worse. You see it causing depression, where you see changes in neurochemistry in the brain, things like serotonin, things like dopamine get affected. Dopamine's that sort of feel-good molecule. If you don't have that feel-good molecule, nothing feels good. It's horrible. You go through life and nothing gives you any pleasure anymore. And then when you have serotonin imbalances, not only do you not have that pleasure, you have something that actively gives you misery.
Right.
So you find misery in everything, and it's really a tough situation. And sometimes it's just very hard to just break out of it. You can't just say to someone, "Get over it."
Right.
Their chemistry, literally, physically, doesn't allow them to get over it, and so you have to implement a multidisciplinary approach. I'm not necessarily a big fan of antidepressants, but in certain situations they're needed, because if you're
get them off the couch, right?
Yeah, if you're so you got exactly. But once you do that, what do you do next? How do you change that lifestyle? How do you naturally get a dopamine response?
Right.
How do you naturally find pleasure in things? We have actually been able to get people, so this is really cool. We've actually been able to reverse depressive and anxiety symptoms and get people off of antidepressants, which is totally cool. So they're
huge.
they're like naturally better.
And how does that work? How did you do it? I'm sure there are multiple steps.
Yeah. So the Control-Alt-Delete's very nice, right? But then once your computer reboots, okay, what software are you going to install?
Yeah.
What are you going to do with your computer, right? So once you're off that couch, once you're feeling better, once you're like, hey, wow, I don't feel as anxious anymore, and I have a patient who has been very affected on a positive way with these infusions, and he's telling me, he can drive now. He can drive on the highway, which a lot of people take for granted. But again, this is what I'm talking about.
High anxiety people sometimes can't do that.
He couldn't even go to the grocery store.
Wow.
So again, we take things like going to the grocery store for granted. I mean, there are people who literally are like, this was the best day ever because I went to the grocery store.
Right.
So we put things in perspective, and when we put things in perspective, and we should all put things in perspective on a daily basis, when we put things in perspective, we start realizing what really matters and how lucky we really are. Right. And if we focus on the positive things in life of what we can do instead of what we can't do, we will actually be happier people.
And there's science behind that.
And there's science behind that. There's science behind that. You can look at endorphins, which are your natural pain-relieving and feel-good compounds. You could look at things like dopamine and serotonin. You could look at cortisol levels. When you find these really angry people, they have elevated cortisol levels, their blood pressure is high, their heart rate's high, their blood sugar is high. If we brain mapped them, or if we did functional MRIs, we could probably find parts of their brain that would be consistent with certain disease states that, things like OCD. You just see less positive data.
Yeah.
And it's negative energy. We talk about negative energy, which is something that I don't think science fully defines.
Right. It's one of those buzzwords that people kind of roll their eyes about. Oh, you energy vampire. But there's truth to this too, and science behind it.
Yeah, it's really, with the science, the only thing you can look at is maybe functional MRIs or brain mapping, and you can kind of see where there's areas of the brain there's more power, areas of the brain where there's less power.
Like when you're enraged, things will lighten up differently than when you're not.
Exactly, exactly. So you could probably look at it that way, but I think there's something that we truly can't define with science and probably never will.
With negative energy?
With energy, yeah. I mean, we've all felt it, hopefully, where you just feel a certain way and you don't know why.
Right.
Or you're around someone who's negative, and I know you've talked to people, I'm sure, that have said this, where you walk by someone with negative energy and you get the chills.
Yeah.
It's like you're walking by a ghost or something.
Absolutely. And you can't talk about this in the doctor's office.
No, most doctors will just sort of brush that. They're just like, okay, you're a little crazy for me.
Sure. Yeah.
Because they don't have a randomized, double-blinded, placebo-controlled, multi-centered trial to prove that.
That you got chills when you walk by that crab ass.
Yeah, it's like I wish you could just sometimes just say to physicians, dude, use your common sense.